Nora Speaks is a weekly podcast that tugs at the soul and consciousness of the Black community. With show topics such as youth empowerment, education, women's impact, and civic engagement, Nora Speaks challenges the listener to not only join the movement, but be the movement. On the show, you'll learn from insightful guests who have demonstrated capacity in these fields and more, and I'm your host, Nora Muhammad. Welcome to the show. Welcome to episode 184 of the Nora Speaks podcast, and I am your host, Nora Muhammad. I'm so happy to be back with you for another episode of the Nora Speaks podcast, and if this is your first time listening, if you are not a subscriber, I encourage you to subscribe to the Nora Speaks podcast. If after listening, you find that this episode, this podcast has value to you and may have value to your friends and your family. So subscribe and share it with others, share it with those who you care about. And if you ever have a question on any of the content that I share with you, if you ever have a question or comment about any of the subject matter that I tackle in this podcast, you can always email me at nora@noraspeaks.com. That's nora@noraspeaks.com. And you can get additional information in the episode's show notes. I am happy and excited that you are listening and an individual that takes a pause to consume content that is a little more sober, a little more cerebral than that which is delivered to us on a continual basis on the various media streaming applications. And I'm glad that you are with me. And I think that we need more cerebral, sober conversations. And we need more talk about issues that impact us, impact our communities, impact our families. And we need discussions on how we can improve the outcomes. And that is what Nora Speaks podcast is about. It's about having dialogue about ways. First, it's dialogue about identifying the issues within our community. And then it's also dialogue about how we can address those issues, how we can tackle those issues, how we can mitigate some of our negative circumstance, and we can amplify our positive circumstance and increase and enhance what we want to see in our homes and our families and our communities and our neighborhoods, and for Black people in general, specifically here in North America. And so I want to thank you again for joining me. And as I was thinking about what this episode would be titled, the phrase or the terms gender wars kept coming to me. You know, I think about gender wars and how the gender wars are hurting us, hurting our community. And I think that it's something that we can tackle, we can discuss, and we should be thinking about. And I did, address some of it in the previous episode talking about Black feminism, for which I can imagine quite a few people probably tuned out. I may have lost some followers and some subscribers because of that episode. Because for us to have a conversation as Black women about ways in which we are, a conversation that may be defensive for Black men, I know that is triggering in this modern society where the entire world, and specifically North America, is using the Black man as a punching bag. And so when there's content about how we misunderstand and where we have conflict and disagreement, where the first inclination is not to blame or bash the Black man, that can be triggering for a lot of women. And I recognize that. And I'm willing to tackle that because this episode is for the edification of the Black community. And I do not believe that we can or should be quiet or silent about issues that are destructive, language that's destructive, behaviors that are destructive, that are not conducive for growth are not conducive for unity and unification of the Black family. These are issues that we have to tackle. And Nora Speaks is a podcast for the Black community. I do not back up from that, and I don't tiptoe around that. I believe the Black community has some specific and particular needs that we require a specific and very serious conversation about. And if that offends you, well, I don't apologize for that. However, this just may not be the podcast for you, and that's okay. There's a lot of podcasts. However, if you're someone that is interested in taking a critical look at our thoughts and habits and how these thoughts and habits impact the outcomes of the Black community, then you're in the right place. You found the right podcast, and you will hear sobering conversations, dialogues and discussion about many issues and concerns that we have. It's time for us to uncover the truth. The truth has been buried for quite some time, and that's what Nora Speaks seeks to tackle. And in areas where you may disagree, in instances where I may be incorrect, you have my email address, nora@noraspeaks.com. You can comment on social media, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at Nora Speaks Podcast. I welcome this. I strive to speak precisely. I strive to be accurate. I'm very dedicated to the needs of our community, and I'm dedicated to the integrity of this show. And so if at any time you find any way that I have erred, I am not above correction. And I'm just a sister trying to do a good work. And sometimes we miss the mark. And so I'm eager to hear from you in areas in which you think that I may have missed the mark. Now, as we are talking about episode 184 and gender wars, or how these gender wars are hurting us, I want to share something with you. And this is from an incredible book called Message to the Black Man in America by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I'm just going to read a short section. In 300 years of slavery, we were lashed, beaten, and killed, given no education, and reared and cared for like the slave master's stock, horses, cows, and other domestic animals. Our children were separated to different plantation owners. For the last approximately 100 years of so-called freedom, the so-called Negroes have been subjected to the worst inhuman treatment of any people who have ever lived on the earth. They have lynched and burned the so-called Negroes during the past century as sport for their wives and children to enjoy. Now, this is our history in America. And some may say, here you are going into the past, or I've heard enough about slavery. I've heard enough about Black history. I don't want to hear anymore. And you may feel that way. However, I read that because I know that our history is very, very relevant and present as it pertains to the condition that we are experiencing today, the social, the economic, the educational, in terms of home ownership, owning property. Every aspect of our being is impacted by our past. And if you've come through the American educational system like I did, you learned American history. You learned about the Revolutionary War. You learned about the quote settlers. You learned about the quote conquistadors. You learned about Lewis and Clark. You learned about Pocahontas and Columbus and Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and the other inventors, presidents, senators. We learned in American history everything that our teachers needed to share with us so that we could understand and appreciate this nation and how this nation got to be the supreme nation on the planet. So it was important enough in our formative years to learn the Pledge of Allegiance. I remember having programs in elementary school where we're singing patriotic songs. We're putting our hand over our heart. We're doing plays and we're acting out the various historical figures. I visited the Betsy Ross House in Philadelphia. We went to go see the bell. In American history was important. It was important for the shaping and molding of young American minds. Now, when we reflect on how we are as Black people specifically, we often want to dismiss the historical context and how that has shaped and molded our current reality. And I say that's a mistake. It's a mistake that we dismiss that. And you may say, all right, Nora, what does that have to do with gender wars and how these gender wars are hurting us? So in the last episode, Black Feminism, you heard me talk about the idea of Black feminism and the isolation, the way that isolates us from Black men, and the idea that Black men really covet the patriarchy. You heard me talk about that. And you also heard me say, if you listen to that episode, that we frankly have not been taught the nature of men. And if we understood the nature of men, then we might not be offended by the natural inclinations they have to lead, to guide, and to protect. But because we, to a large extent, to a great extent, do not understand that nature, we have been indoctrinated. And yes, I will use that word, indoctrinated. We have been indoctrinated to flinch when a Black man expresses his strength or expresses that natural desire or that natural inclination for leadership, because we don't understand their nature. So just going back, reading to the reading that I just shared with you, I talked about in this reading the slavery, the way that we were brutalized. We were given no education. We were not taught any more than the livestock on the plantation. We were lynched. We were burned, even for entertainment. See, today they're taking their children and their wives to the NCAA playoffs. They're taking them to the NBA finals. They're taking their family to the Super Bowl for entertainment. Well, there was a time when we were their entertainment. Our death, our misery, our suffering, the stench of burning flesh, the cries of a person being burnt alive, the kicking of the body that's being hung. This was entertainment, and we were the subject of that entertainment. And so I say that bringing that forward and thinking about what kind of people, could we be had we not been so devastated and so destroyed? And what kind of people are we because we were so devastated and so destroyed? There are so many podcasts and shows that stream, and there are shows with men, Black men, and they talk about their issues, the issues that they have with Black women. And there are so many shows with Black women, and they're talking about their issues with Black men. And I am not opposed to dialogue, but I find that a great deal of the dialogue that is occurring, it's destructive. You know, it's in some cases, you know, there's clickbait. So the most inflammatory thing is the headline or the title of the show, so that they can draw in an audience. And then during the show, they're saying the most heinous of things: men about women, women about men, Black men about Black women, and Black women about Black men. And so we're just going at it. And it shows me that in so many ways we don't understand each other. We're just not seeing eye to eye. And I say it's destructive and harmful because I really don't see too many people who are really, really being constructive. So I'll just say a few things. In my research, I've come across conversations where the subject is how black men are trash. I've come across conversations where black women are encouraging the abortion of black male babies, as horrific as that sounds. I see us as black women adding to the hurt, the pain, the isolation that a black man experiences. At the same time, I see from some of the language that I hear from our brothers, them contributing to the pain, the isolation, and the hurt of the black woman. But what I will say about black women is that we have not often been called to the carpet in a way of correction. I heard someone say that the difference between black men when they go off and say these things in social media, on podcasts, on their YouTube pages, versus when we go off in social media, YouTube, and on podcasts, the difference is that when black women say hurtful things about black men, they're backed by white supremacy. And I found that to a great extent to be true. I think that we have not had the opportunity to be examined. We have not had the same kind of spotlight shown on us. The black man has been picked apart. And I know you may be thinking, here you are defending the black men again. I'm defending black women. I'm defending black children. And yes, I'm defending the black man because I want to speak on behalf of the black family. And I just don't see that happening. And when I say that as women, we have not had the opportunity to be examined the same way that the black man has been examined. Because when we sit for an examination, then we get to see areas of deficiency. We get to see areas where we are misguided. We get to see areas where we're wrong. And as I mentioned about not understanding the nature of men, not understanding the nature of women, not understanding the nature of others, we find ourselves very often perpetuating stereotypes about black men, perpetuating stereotypes about how they don't want to raise their children, about how they don't want to be providers. And then we have this strange dichotomy that I don't see us calling each other out on. We trash men because they're not providers. We trash them because they're not, quote, high earners, right? There's not a lot of professional black men. This is what some of our intellectual academic sisters say. So we trash them because of what they're not able to provide in terms of lifestyle that really just relates to money and wealth, not values, money and wealth. But then these same women trash and push back on men who say, look, I have means, let me lead you with it. Well, we don't want that either. So we're not being examined. We really do not understand the nature of men. We don't understand even our nature because we have not been taught our nature. Then we're just so confused. And you can say, well, Nora, what do you have to say to the brothers? Well, I'll say to the brothers, go find a brother to teach you because that is not my role. You will not find me trying to teach men because that is not my role. I raised my sons while they were boys, and after a certain age, I knew that their father, my husband, had to spend time with them, putting that other part in them so that they could be balanced individuals. So in terms of making men, that's not something that I will ever profess to be able to do or even want to do. What I want to do is show us in general that we can be better, that we should do better, because our community is a casualty of our gender wars. And others benefit from us fighting and attacking each other. And it's fascinating that while we have our head down, kicking and scratching and fighting each other, then everything that we claim to want in terms of freedom, justice, and equality, rights, and all of this that we say that we want, we're not getting any of that. And as Black women, we act as if we can get any of that from Black men, right? Because as feminists, Black women are angry at the patriarchy. Well, Black men don't represent the patriarchy. In fact, Black men are subject to the patriarchy. Black men are not imprisoning themselves. Black men are not bringing guns to the Black community so that Black boys can shoot themselves. Black men are victims of the patriarchy too. The patriarchy that we say that we want to topple. So I just say this to say that, so many efforts are misguided, or maybe some of these people just want to be entertaining. Atlanta Housewives, Bright Bravo, they're entertaining people. MTV, they're entertaining people. Maybe these people are just, putting out their characters. Maybe this isn't really what they think or believe. However, regardless of that, our people are being hurt by what we are saying, and we have to be more responsible. I can't control what somebody else says with their microphone. I wish I could, but I can't control what other women are saying with their microphone, and I don't have permission to take their microphones. So when I get to the microphone, I have to speak on behalf of our people, the brothers and the sisters. And I just know that we can be a lot better. We could be a lot kinder, and the hurt and damage that we are doing to each other is evident in how our children relate to one another. Our children within the household and our children outside of our households. We can look at the damage that's occurring by how our young people are dealing with one another. And, it's reaching a critical point, and we have to do better. And so what I'm doing with this episode is I'm calling us out and encouraging us to do better. Be more responsible with our language. Let's not make these sweeping generalities about men and about women. We are continually in America in a deeply, deeply suffering state. We are still deeply traumatized by this experience. We have not received the support, the help, the therapy that we need, or that any people would need to recover from over 500 years of traumatic abuse. And it's not going to get better if we continue to take bats at each other. So let's be kinder. Let's be more compassionate. Let's be more empathetic. Let's be more loving. And the fact that we are so hostile and so angry shows that there is a deficit of love in the Black community. And I challenge all of us to do better, including myself, to do better and to be better. Our children, our communities are the casualty of our gender wars. So instead of us working against each other, let's figure out a way of how we can work with each other. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Nora Speaks podcast. Thank you for listening. I really, really, really do appreciate it. I don't take this show, or you as a listener, I don't take any of it for granted. And that's why I try to be very thoughtful and deliberate in what I share on this podcast. So again, thanks for listening. Until next time, stay in peace. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Nora Speaks podcast. Be on the lookout for a new episode coming at you fresh next week. And as always, if you want to learn more about me and the work that I do, visit my website, norahmuhammad.com. Or if you have a listener question, email me at info@norahspeaks.com. You can also follow the Nora Speaks podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Nora Speaks Podcast. I'll be sure to include links in the show notes. If this show has value to you, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share it with family and friends. And be sure to check out previous episodes. And remember, don't just join the movement, be the movement. Stay in peace.